Oh, shoot. I knew I forgot something. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. I'm about to start working on the next project, which is a saw vise, but you're here to watch a piece that I forgot on the side table. And unfortunately, I would have the side table here showing to you, but I already gave it to its new owner, which is my parents. So I can't show you the piece that I forgot. But the front stretcher, the connector in between the on top and below the drawer, I did not show how to connect those into the legs. So here I want to go back and rectify that, and we're going to have part 4.5 to show how to connect the stretcher in. So I'm sorry I missed that. If you'd like to follow along with the plans, those are now available. But yeah, let me stop talking and just get back into this. Now on the front two legs, the tenon goes all the way through, but the problem is the front stretcher actually has this split structure that comes in here. So there's no way of making that long tenon that sticks all the way through. So in this case, in order to keep the style and the look of it, I actually want to put a fake through tenon up here just to make it look kind of good so it matches the back legs. Now this one is fairly easy because you can make it any size you want. I'm going to keep it the same 2-inch long by that width. So in order to do that, first I'm going to set up a marking gauge at this distance down, because that is the same on all of them, and I'm just going to transfer that mark right up here, and then off of that I'm going to measure down 2 inches, and then that gives me my bottom placement. So 2 inches down, and then with those two marks in place, I can come in with the same mortising gauge that I had, the same spacing, and draw this line out here. Now I can come in and chop this out, and I'm only going to chop this in about 1/4 inch because I don't need it to go any deeper. I just need it to go deep enough to hold a little fake tenon in there. And sometime in the future we're going to make a tenon to fit these spaces. So it'll basically just be 2 inches long by 1/4 inch thick by a 1/2 inch tall. So half of it will house down into that hole and half of it will be up and out of that space. So once we have that done, it's just like working with any of the other mortises. Grab the mortising chisel and chop away, except for I don't want to take it too deep. So I'm going to start here. I'm just going to go tap, back up 1/8 inch or so, tap, and I'm almost down to depth here. Tap, tap. I just need the one there. And one more tap and we'll be down to depth. There, we're down to depth. And so I just need, from here on out, I can go a little over 1/8 inch, one good heavy tap, and I'm down to depth. And I'm just going to do that all the way across, clean out both ends, and we'll have a mortise here ready for a fake tenon. So after this, let's go and work on the connections of the front stretchers into the tops of these. Okay, so this is the front left leg, and in the top of this is the top stretcher needs to slide in here, and then there's going to be the bottom stretcher which will then mortise in here. So we need to cut out a mortise for this to slide into, and then we also need to cut out a sliding dovetail slot or mortise for this to slide in this way from the end. So what I need to do is find out precisely how far down this goes. So first thing I want to do is set up the marking gauge to the depth of this. That's why before I really didn't care how long this actual dovetail was, because I can just set that, and then I've got my mark. And then I can put that mark on the end here, and that will give me a depth of the dovetail to go down to. So I can take this piece, and once I find where front is, there it is, I can then set this on here and check that that indeed is the depth it needs to be, and yes it is. So the next thing we need to figure out is where to place this stretcher this way on the leg. Should be closer to the front, should be closer to the back. In this case, I want the front face of this to be 1/4 inch in from the front of the leg. And so I have a marking gauge set up with a 1/4 inch marking on there. So I'm just going to put that on there. And that will be the front face of the stretcher. So if I set this on here now and line this all up right to that front face, now what I can do is I can take my knife and I can mark out this tail and this tail. And I'm not going to be doing it with it clamped here to the bench because this is kind of painful. So first thing I'm going to do, take it out of this, flip it over, And then with it between my legs like this, then I can do this a lot easier. So I can line it up with this line that I created there, and line it up with this line that I put there. And then I can draw this tail. I'm just going to draw it very lightly at first so I don't move this around, and then get heavier and heavier as I go. Then I'll draw the one on the other side. So now I have this dovetail marked out here. The other thing I need to do is mark out the rectangle on the top surface here of where that dovetail is. So I'm going to change this marking gauge again, and I'm going to set this in to where that mark is at the top of the dovetail, and bring that back down this way. And then do the same thing on the other side. Then the last mark I need is how deep to cut it this way. So I can do that by setting this up on here, knife in here, and whoop, and mark it out. So there is the depth that I need to go to cut that in. Now we can grab a chisel, set it on that line. I'm just going to come in a little bit between an 1/8 and a 1/16. Start it vertical, and then as it's vertical, I'm going to tip it a little bit more to match the angle of that dovetail. I'm just staying away from the angle, going down a little ways, knocking that out. I'm going a hair deep there. Oh well, no one's going to see it. Same thing down this side. And I just want to create this shape of the dovetail and make sure that it's the right shape that I'm looking for, so that we can fit the dovetail in there and make sure that it's going to work before cutting out the rest of the slot. You see, I'm just kind of murdering this. Not looking for anything perfect or special. Just want something that will work. Then one of the hardest points are these corners. So I like to come up and just work in from the end grain and kind of split this out. That makes it easier to come back and cut out this way. Then we get down the corners. I have this tiny little chisel that I picked up a while ago that is great for working back into these slots. Then we can bring over the dovetail and just see how sloppy this one is. And this one's probably pretty darn sloppy. Yeah, okay, that's really sloppy. That's about the worst one I've ever done. So we'll just keep on keeping on. The top here is the size I want it to be. So I'm going to cut in another 1/8 inch and try it again, make it a little smaller, and see if that works. This time I cut in a little smaller. So let's see how that fits in. Oh, and that one's getting tight. That's what I'm looking for. So I can look at it and figure out where it's tight, what I need to remove. Pull a little bit out of this corner here. Then we can try it again. And that's more the fit I'm looking for. That's tight. So now that I have the size in there that I want, then I'm just going to march my way back. Same thing as before, start it in, tip it over at an angle, pull that out, come in here, tip it at an angle. And I'm just going to remove a lot of the majority very quickly, very easily this way, and then I'll come back in and clean it up. So I'm going to chop to the back, and I'll come back when I'm done. Okay, so now I've removed most of the material, and I'm just going to come in from the end grain here, right along that where I was already at, and just chop back in. Not looking for anything terribly precise. I'm just looking for something kind of tight. It's not going to be the cleanest joint because of that mess up at the beginning, but oh well, such is life. Then to get back into those really tight corners, I bring this in here. That allows me to just work down all the way into those corners. Now, if you don't have something like this to work back into those corners, all you do is you chamfer off the corner of the dovetail, and then you don't have to worry about it. But I don't know, there's something about this that I really enjoy. So let's give it another try and see how our fit is. Ooh, I like that. It needs to go a little deeper. I'm just a little bit fuzzy on the outside here. So after that, we can test it down on. And this one goes in rather nice. So you can still hold up the leg with this here, and it still fits in nicely. So there is the top. Now let's work on this bottom one. How does that fit into there? So now we have the first stretcher in here. I need to then attach the second stretcher, and you can see how there's just a mortise that this fits down into. And I want to keep this a really nice tight fit. that's one side. I'm going to then make this mortise on both sides. So rather than showing you on the first side, I decided to go and do that off camera. See how tight that joint is. But what I need to do is, now that I've made it on this side, I need to transfer the marks over to the first side. To lay the marks out on the first side, I took an existing stretcher and I put it on at the correct location, and then I made a small nick here on the edge. That's where the bottom of this stretcher needs to go, so that it matches all the way around. Then I can put this on there and then make a second nick over here. And then those two nicks get brought across to this, so then I can then put the tenon on there and mark out where it needs to be. I'm going to basically do the exact same thing on this side, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that the bottom of this tenon is the exact same point as the bottom on this tenon. So I'm going to put the two of them together and then transfer the mark all the way over from the side this way. So I'm going to line that right up with the bottom, put a nick right here. Because I have it already, I'm going to put it right here. I'll put a nick right here, and then I'm going to double check and make sure that this, which actually goes this way, make sure that fits in between those two nicks. And sure shooting, it does. So the next thing I need to do is set up a marking gauge at whatever the distance is for this. So I'm going to slide this into the slot and then set up the marking gauge here away from the wall. So I have the proper distance away from the wall to the side of that tenon. And I'm going to need to do that on both sides. So I can put this here. So to find that mark, I'm going to loosen up my marking gauge, put it on here, and I'm going to put in the distance in from the wall on this. And then I'm going to put that mark over here. And now this is the front face of the tenon. So the front face of the tenon is here. I need to know exactly where the tenon actual is. So what I can do is put this on here and then use my marking knife and put in marks on the front without moving it too much, and the back. And this lets me know the width of that tenon slot, the mortise. I can set the marking gauge to that width. Just going to be something around there. And now I know the width of that mortise precisely. See if it's the same on this side, and it's the same on that side. I know precisely where to cut that. I just need to draw these lines a little longer on the bottom and top of that. So now, just like any other mortise, we can then chop this one out. Now, I don't have a 1/2 inch wide mortising chisel. I do have the 1/4 inch wide one, so I can do one here, and just zigzag back and forth. Or I can use the 1/2 inch wide blade, which in this case is right on. So I think I'm going to use this one and just play with it. It reminds me how much I actually like using a mortising chisel. It feels better to hit a mortising chisel than a bench chisel. But bench chisel works fine. So if you don't have the money for it, don't worry. Don't need to get one. So I'm just going to chop this in just like any other mortise, and I'll come back once I get close to the bottom and let you see what we have. So now I've gotten this cleaned out most of the way, just like pretty much any other mortise out there. I want to know, is it deep enough? And so I can actually set this marking gauge to the depth of the shoulder. There we go. And then I can use this marking gauge as a depth sounder. And no, I've got another 3/16 of an inch to go or so. So I'm going to keep on chopping down until I get down to a depth that will allow that tenon to fit in. And there, now we're down to depth. So we can test this out and see just how well that one fits in there. That's actually a little more sloppy than I wanted. Boy, I can't win with these ones I'm putting on video today. But oh well, it's close enough, and that will work for what we need it to. So there you have it. It's starting to look like a table. All of the joinery is basically done. We'll still be doing the drawbore tenons a little bit later. Those will have to wait until we're ready for assembly, and we'll figure those out when we get there. I'm going to be doing the tapering of the legs, cutting them to length in the next video, so that should be an interesting one. If you are waiting for the plans, I will have those out soon. I'm trying to get this to the point where I can well, I have it done enough that I'm comfortable with the plan. So those will be coming out here eventually. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to comment and help you out with that. Go ahead and leave those down below. So hopefully next time we're going to be addressing these legs, making them look a little bit better, and going from there. So I hope you like the build thus far. This has been kind of fun working in a little bit more detail and spending some time on it. I want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why I can put more detail into these videos and do this longer format. I hope you like that. If you'd like to find out more about Patreon or possibly help out with that, you can do so right down there. Also, if you'd like to subscribe and see some behind the scenes footage, you can do that as well. That's about it for today. And until next time, have a wonderful day.